Okay, moving on to the team that I am predicting to finish 6th in the Big East. That would be Steve Wojciechowski and his Marquette Golden Eagles. And when you look at this Marquette team, it is crazy because Wojo is entering his 7th season as the head coach of the Golden Eagles. And it's crazy because I feel like it was only yesterday when I was out here seeing Buzz Williams become the head coach at Virginia Tech. Wojo became the head coach at Marquette in the Big East. And the rest is history. And I feel like when I look at this Marquette roster, there are a couple of things that stand out right off the bat. Number one, it's that the Marcus Howard era is over, and he was unreal. They were up and down, but they're really going to be a different-looking team this year. Now, the interesting thing about this Marquette team is that even though they're losing Marcus Howard, they are bringing back a decent amount of returners, like Theo John, like Kobe McEwen, like Jamal Cain, like Greg Elliott. They also do lose Brendan Bailey and Sakar Adam as well as Howard, two guys that I think, weren't the best players, but I think Adam was underrated. I think he made a nice impact. And Brendan Bailey, he never broke out like a lot of people thought he was going to, but he last year at least was a decent starter, super athletic, super high ceiling. So it's unfortunate to see both of those guys gone. But for me, the pressure is on Steve Wojciechowski right now because sure, last season, Wojo was on track to make his 3rd NCAA tournament in 6 seasons. But his accomplishments thus far haven't been that good, especially when you compare it to guys like Buzz Williams and Tom Crean, who were out here leading this Marquette program in further directions when they were in charge. KenPom also supports this narrative that Wojo has failed to live up to his team's expectations because in 5 of 6 seasons, Marquette has ended the year ranked lower than it did in the preseason under Wojo since he's been the head coach. So basically, if you guys don't understand what I meant there, let's just say KenPom projected Marquette to finish as the 25th ranked team in the preseason. 5 out of 7 times they've been ranked 26th or behind, or 30th, they've been ranked 30 or behind. So basically, whatever they're ranked in the preseason, they finish worse than that in 5 out of 6 seasons since Wojo has been the head coach. That's not really good. If you remember last year, 2 years ago, Marquette had a real opportunity to win the Big East. That's when they had the Hausers there, they had Marcus Howard, Theo John, and I believe they had to win like one of their last 7 games, including their last game of the season, which was a home game to Georgetown. And Mac McClung just went absolutely off. And if you remember, Georgetown ended up getting the victory. Marquette really went into the NCAA tournament struggling, and they played John Morant and Murray State in the first round and got absolutely destroyed. The game really wasn't that close at all, and that's a problem. You then look at 2 seasons ago, you look at last year. Marquette lost 6 of their final 7 games, and yeah, were they on pace to make an NCAA tournament? Yes, I get it. But at the same time, you really don't want to be going into the NCAA tournament playing that kind of basketball. It's really not good. It can't happen. And for the second year in a row now, Marquette has lost 6 of their last 7 games to end the season. So if you're a Golden Eagle fan and you start the season off very well, I'm going to be one to be judging Wojo on the fact that, if you're showing me that this team could win in the beginning of the season, but not towards the end of the season, that's a huge problem. Because that's what we want to do, man. That's how Marquette fans should be thinking right now. They should be thinking to themselves, look, it's fine that you're getting us to the tournament each and every year. Whatever. We get it. It's fine. And not every year. 5 out of 6 years. It's fine. Whatever. But at the same time, once we get there, we have to do more. And Wojo does not have an NCAA tournament win since he's been the head coach of Marquette. Now, with the pandemic last year, maybe he would have gotten one. But it is pretty crazy that Marcus Howard did not win an NCAA tournament game during his career at Marquette. Obviously, very unfortunate as well that he didn't even get the chance to do it during his senior year. But Marquette needs to be better in March in the Big East tournament, in the NCAA tournament, and if I was a Golden Eagle fan, that would be one of my number 1 priorities going into this season. Now, going into this season, Marquette should be in the fight for another at-large bid to the Big Dance, but it's anything but a certainty. I think their attack could look extremely different without Howard. For instance, the Golden Eagles didn't really shoot that many threes before he came to Marquette, but were consistently among the nation's highest three-point attempt rated squads over the last 4 seasons. And Wojo's pace may also get dialed back a notch or two without a guy who could shoot it from anywhere in the gym with high success. On the flip side, Howard's departure could be a blessing in disguise, especially on the defensive side of the ball. While not an awful defender, he was more of a liability than he was an asset, and the Eagles fared better defensively, I think, when he was on the bench. We also entered the offseason with a lot of concern about this Marquette team. Losing Marcus Howard, losing Sakar Annam, and losing Brendan Bailey when you really didn't expect them to. You kind of thought, all right, now Marquette has a hole at both guard spots, trying to replace Howard. And also, even though he wasn't the best player, now Marquette is going to have to replace Brendan Bailey, who I did like watching him play. You know, he wasn't the best player. He didn't really break out like a lot of people expected him to do so. But the fact that he is currently not on this Marquette roster when a lot of people expected him to be one of the bigger parts of this team, if you're a Marquette fan, yeah, you obviously have to be disappointed. But DJ Carton, the transfer guard from Ohio State, comes in, and he averaged 10 and 3 for the Buckeyes last year. And this guy is a former fringe 5-star recruit, and we know he could score the basketball. He's a former top 30 recruit, 3 years of eligibility left, and really, I don't think if you're Marquette, you couldn't have asked for a better replacement than DJ Carton, because this instantly raises Marquette's ceiling for me. He was super productive while in the game at Ohio State, and I feel like the Buckeyes were better when he was on the court. I think he should be able to come in and be one of the better point guards in the country and be a good replacement for Marcus Howard. Dawson Garcia, the freshman forward, is another big-time, highly recruited player that comes in. He's very skilled, and I think he's going to be starting at the 4, next to Theo John at the 5, who is one of the better defenders in the country. And it's interesting because when you look at it, I think DJ Carton was the piece that makes this team much better, especially because you don't have to rely on Symir Torrance. I think Symir Torrance is going to be a very important part to this Marquette team. But let's keep in mind, Jose Perez, the transfer from Gardner-Webb, it doesn't look like he's going to get a waiver and be eligible for this season. So without DJ Carton, Torrance would have had to be the Marquette starting point guard. And he did average 1.6 assists per game last year, but when you compare that to DJ Carton, I think you give Symir Torrance a little bit more time to develop as a player. He played sparingly last year as a freshman, not that much, but I think this year, playing as the 6th man, 7th man for this Marquette team, Torrance is a kid that really has some high potential and could really, really play and take a huge step forward. The other key piece for me on this Marquette team is Kobe Mcewen. I think they need him to bounce back in as big a way as possible. If you remember last year, Quincy McKnight, during his first year at Seton Hall, he was a starting point guard, and he was transferring up to the Big East from a mid-major school, kind of similar to Kobe Mcewen. I know Kobe played in the Mountain West, which is at a little bit of a higher level than where Quincy played, but Quincy was not great his junior year, his first year as a transfer for Seton Hall. But then in his second year, once he got used to playing in the Big East and the physicality of the league and got more and more aware of what guys' tendencies are, he was really able to step up his game and produce. If I'm a Marquette fan, I want to see him do the same thing as Quincy McKnight and really get more adjusted to the league and come in and play much better. Sometimes that happens, and I feel like a lot of people will think less of the transfer and just forget how good they possibly could be, because sometimes it does take some time to get adjusted. Next thing you know, they're really good in year 2. And I do think if he could play at his Utah State form, that is a really good backcourt duo in terms of the ability to create and handle the ball with Mcewen and Carton. When you look at the front court, I think Dawson Garcia is ready to start, super skilled, and next side, Theo John. And another kid I wanted to talk about for this Marquette team is Justin Lewis. He's someone that could play the 4 or the 5, and someone that a lot of people around the college basketball world are buying into. The interesting part about this Marquette team for me is their 3 spot. It's open with possible glue guys like Greg Elliott, who has been good, but hasn't really been able to stay healthy throughout his career. He played 20 minutes per game last year. Jamal Cain is bigger, longer than Elliott, and can provide you a little more wing size and 3-point shooting, but he's been super up and down also a former top 100 recruit. And then you have Symir Torrance, who is the third guard. I spoke a little bit about him earlier when I mentioned DJ Carton and the point guard. He's physical. He's not a great shooter, but he really could provide you with toughness, and I think he's going to make a big-time impact and have a lot to do with the way this Marquette team goes for this upcoming season. I think Marquette has a strong top 8 when you look at a projected starting 5 of like Carton, Mcewen, Kane, Garcia, and Theo John, and then you play a Greg Elliott off the bench, you play a Justin Lewis off the bench, you play a Symir Torrance off the bench, and ultimately that is going to be your 8-man rotation. Jose Perez, it doesn't look like is going to get a waiver. Dexter Acano, redshirt freshman, it's going to be fascinating to me to see how much time he gets, but yeah, Justin Lewis is the other kid I really wanted to remind you guys from Marquette. I see him as a freshman making a big-time impact off the bench, but my question is, what are all these guys going to look like without Marcus Howard? Even with how great DJ Carton is, I think we could all agree he's not Marcus Howard, and they need to get better around the point guard position, because if they didn't, I don't know how successful this team is going to be. They're going to need DJ Carton to be, possibly an all Big East guy, but even if he is, they're going to need improvements from a Greg Elliott or, from a Kobe Mcewen. And losing Brandon Bailey and Sakar Adam are big losses as well, especially on the defensive side of the ball. Being replaced with glue guys and freshmen and offensive minded forwards, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. I like Dawson Garcia. I think he's super skilled, but is he going to provide you the toughness and physicality that a Brendan Bailey did, and athleticism? Who knows? Probably not. So ultimately, which Marquette team, which version of that Marquette team is going to be the best? I think there's a possibility that Marquette takes a little bit of a step back in 2021. But I don't think it's as large as many would think, given the loss of Marcus Howard. I think Marquette right now is a Dayton team. I would have them playing in the first 4 games in Dayton. Wojo, there's some pressure on, and there's plenty of talent to have a really good offense, and his team's defense could be the best it's been during his coaching career with Mcewen and Elliott and Garcia and John, and the Golden Eagles appear to be firmly in the middle of the Big East pecking order to start the season. And the thing you always have to remember for Marquette is there's always a wide range of possibilities, and I feel like there is a good chance that, they could maybe have a disappointing season and go under 500 in conference. And if that does happen, I guarantee you that there are going to be Marquette fans calling for Steve Wojciechowski's job. And to be honest, I wouldn't blame them. There's plenty of talent on this team for Wojo. It's time not only to get to the NCAA tournament, but win a game as well.